The small town of Wahu, nestled in Honolulu, had never faced such a horrifying case. On the early morning of January 13, 2022, what seemed like a peaceful day, much like any other, suddenly turned into a devastating tragedy. Jon Tokuhara, a renowned acupuncturist beloved by the community for his compassion and healing skills, was found dead in his own clinic. Hello, I'm Jon, and welcome to Killer Cases. Today, we're delving into a lesser-known but fascinating case from Hawaii. Stay tuned, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real crime stories. Jon's mother, Mrs. Lily, was the first to enter the crime scene. The sight before her was beyond belief. Her only son, Jon, lay motionless in a pool of blood. His face bore the unmistakable marks of agony, a sign that his death had been anything but peaceful. Mrs. Lily screamed in despair, but by the time emergency services arrived, it was too late. Jon showed no signs of life. What exactly happened in those 48 fateful seconds? Police quickly arrived on the scene, but as they entered the clinic, they immediately realized this was no ordinary murder case. Clues that seemed straightforward: shell casings, a discarded bucket hat, security camera footage, all veiled a far more complex story. The killer needed just 48 seconds to commit this brutal act and vanish without a trace. What chilled the town the most was the cold, calculated precision of the crime. There appeared to be no clear motive, as Jon Tokuhara seemingly had no enemies. A case that initially seemed easy to solve soon spiraled into a web of uncertainty and uncharted shadows. Who killed Jon Tokuhara, and what really happened behind those clinic doors? As soon as the report came in, the police quickly arrived at the scene of Jon Tokuhara's murder. However, what they encountered was a complex puzzle. Bullet casings were scattered across the floor, a bucket hat left behind by the killer, and security camera footage showed a white pickup truck appearing near Jon's clinic at the time of the murder. At first, it seemed like these clues would quickly lead to answers, but in reality, they only made the case more confusing. The bucket hat, initially thought to be a minor detail, turned out to be one of the most important pieces of evidence. Who would leave such an identifiable item behind at the crime scene? The hat suggested that the murder was carefully planned, yet there was an element of carelessness. DNA found on the hat could not definitively identify the killer. This raised a critical question. Did the killer intentionally leave the hat, or was it simply a mistake made in a moment of panic? Security cameras from around the clinic captured footage of a man wearing a bucket hat and sunglasses entering the clinic at approximately 6:16 p.m. Only 48 seconds later, he exited at a rapid pace, leaving no clear traces behind. The brevity of the time he spent in the clinic raised significant suspicions with the police, as Jon's murder had been carried out with such speed, precision, and cold-bloodedness. The killer acted without hesitation. In addition, the white pickup truck became a crucial part of the investigation. Security cameras recorded the truck moving near the clinic around the time of the crime. While there was no concrete evidence directly linking the truck to the killer, its presence near the scene could not be ignored. Detectives tried to track down the truck, but encountered numerous challenges. Hundreds of similar vehicles were registered in the area, making it difficult to pinpoint which one might be involved. What made the case even more perplexing was that Jon Tokuhara was known as a man without enemies. He was a well-respected and beloved acupuncturist in the community. No one could have imagined Jon would become the target of such a cold-blooded and brutal murder. This raised many questions for the police. Why was Jon killed? Who had a motive strong enough to carry out such a heinous act? Despite numerous clues, none of them led directly to a specific suspect. The case was enveloped in confusion and mystery. The man wearing the bucket hat and sunglasses had entered the clinic and left in just 48 seconds. But who was he? And why did he kill Jon Tokuhara? The case began to evolve into a complex puzzle, not only for the police but for the entire community. The pieces of this mystery did not seem to fit together, and the overall picture of the crime grew increasingly blurred. The police continued to pursue the investigation with persistence, but the deeper they delved, the more elusive the case became. A man with strange behavior, a ruthless murder, and clues that seemed clear but led to dead ends. Who was this mysterious man? And why was he so determined to kill Jon? Only time would answer these questions. But for now, all that remained was ambiguity and uncertainty. At first, Jon Tokuhara was described by friends and family as a model man. He was kind-hearted, dedicated, and known as a reputable acupuncturist who always gave his best to serve the community. But as the police dug deeper into Jon's private life, a different story began to emerge. The image of an impeccable man quickly faded, and the secrets from his personal life shocked everyone. Jon was not just an excellent acupuncturist. Beneath the perfect exterior, he had an illicit affair with Joyce Thompson, one of his patients. The messages exchanged between them, filled with subtle innuendos and undeniable intimacy, started to reveal the truth that Jon and Joyce were far more than just doctor and patient. Sensitive photos, secret meetings, and discreet promises showed that their relationship had been carried on in the shadows for quite some time. When Eric Thompson, Joyce's husband, discovered the affair, he couldn't stay silent. The husband who had always trusted his wife now became the prime suspect in this murder case. Jealousy, betrayal, and wounded pride gave Eric a clear motive. But the case wasn't as straightforward as a tale of infidelity leading to murder. The evidence was still insufficient to convict Eric, and everything seemed to grow more complicated. The police began to wonder, could there be someone else with a reason to despise Jon? Was this truly a crime of jealousy, or were there darker secrets in the victim's life that had yet to be uncovered? As detectives continued to dig deeper into Jon Tokuhara's personal life, they discovered that Joyce wasn't the only woman involved with him. Further investigations revealed a much more complicated picture. Jon, once seen as a model acupuncturist and a kind-hearted man, had actually engaged in multiple extramarital affairs. Some of these relationships had even destroyed marriages and caused significant harm to families. This discovery opened up an entirely new line of investigation for the police. Could these affairs have been the reason Jon was murdered? Had he unknowingly created a list of enemies he wasn't aware of? The discovery of Jon's extramarital relationships drastically shifted the detective's perspective on the case. What initially seemed like a simple act of betrayal within one marriage now expanded to potentially involve others who might have had motives to harm Jon. Each uncovered affair introduced a new layer of suspicion. People who had been romantically involved with Jon, or those who had been hurt by those relationships, suddenly became persons of interest. However, Eric Thompson remained the prime suspect. On the day of the murder, Eric had left his home at exactly the time the crime took place. Surveillance cameras from nearby captured Eric's white pickup truck leaving the house. According to his statement, Eric claimed that he was out running personal errands and had never gone near Jon's clinic. Yet the timing of Eric's departure and the crime made it impossible for the police to ignore him. The detectives delved further into Eric's movements that day. Although the road cameras didn't capture his entire route, they indicated that the travel time from Eric's home to Jon's clinic perfectly aligned with the time of the murder. While there was no footage of Eric at the crime scene, the camera evidence raised enough suspicion. Additionally, the bucket hat left behind by the killer became a crucial piece of evidence. DNA found on the hat was compared to Eric's, but the results were inconclusive. While the DNA wasn't a definitive match, it also didn't exclude Eric from being the suspect. This left the police in a difficult position. While many signs pointed to Eric, the evidence wasn't strong enough to definitively accuse him of murder. The case grew even more complex when Eric's alibi couldn't be fully verified. He claimed he had gone to a grocery store, but no evidence or witnesses could confirm this. His pickup truck, when inspected, also didn't reveal any traces linking him to the crime. Despite multiple suspicions, there was no concrete evidence to indict Eric. As detectives continued to follow these leads, the case seemed to hit a dead end. Eric continued to adamantly deny any involvement, while Jon's numerous extramarital affairs opened up new possibilities. Was Eric truly the killer, or was someone else behind the crime? The puzzle remained incomplete, and the truth behind Jon Tokuhara's death remained shrouded in mystery. The trial of Jon Tokuhara's murder began with intense public interest. Eric Thompson, Joyce's husband and the prime suspect, became the focal point of the investigation. With a clear motive stemming from the discovery of his wife's affair with Jon, Eric seemed like the perfect suspect. Many believed that jealousy, hatred, and betrayal had driven Eric to commit a brutal murder. However, as the trial progressed, what once appeared to be a clear-cut case began to unravel. All the police had were circumstantial pieces of evidence: a bucket hat with inconclusive DNA traces, and camera footage capturing Eric's white pickup truck near the scene. But there was no concrete proof linking Eric to the clinic at the exact time of Jon's death. These pieces of evidence were not strong enough to convince the jury. One of the key points in the case was the DNA test results from the bucket hat left at the scene by the killer. DNA experts reported that the samples found on the hat could not definitively prove that Eric was the one wearing it at the time of the murder. The DNA evidence was too weak to confirm Eric's guilt, but also too ambiguous to rule him out entirely. This uncertainty caused the jury members to question the reliability of the entire case. Furthermore, the murder weapon was never found. This missing piece of physical evidence left a significant gap in the prosecution's case. Despite the police searching Eric's home and thoroughly inspecting the firearms he owned, none matched the weapon used in the murder. This further fueled doubts about Eric's involvement. Adding to the complexity were Eric's statements in court. He fully denied all accusations, maintaining that he was not at the crime scene when the murder took place. His account of his activities on the day of the crime could neither be fully verified nor completely disproven. Without clear witnesses, the lack of direct evidence placing Eric at the scene only complicated the case further. While many believed Eric to be the killer, there remained enough doubt to prevent the jury from reaching a unanimous decision. The uncertainty surrounding the evidence, coupled with the vague details, meant the case could not be resolved as expected. The jury deliberated for several days, but ultimately failed to reach a verdict. As a result, the trial ended in a mistrial. Eric Thompson, whom many had believed to be the perpetrator, was not convicted. Jon Tokuhara's family still has not found the justice they sought, and the community remains engulfed in suspicion and unease. The question of who killed Jon Tokuhara remains unanswered, and whether a second trial will take place is yet to be seen. The complexity of the case lies not only in the lack of evidence, but also in the flaws within the legal process. Although Eric seemed like the perfect suspect, the absence of definitive proof has left the case unresolved, leaving Jon's family waiting for the justice they still hope to receive. The murder of Jon Tokuhara is not just a story of love and betrayal. Behind this tragedy lie complex secrets that no one has fully unraveled. Jon, a renowned acupuncturist with what seemed like a perfect life, was killed under mysterious circumstances. Eric Thompson, the betrayed husband with a clear motive stemming from his wife's affair with Jon, became the prime suspect. But what really happened? Is Eric truly the murderer, or is there someone else still at large? Someone who took advantage of the situation to commit this heinous act. What makes this case particularly intriguing are the complicated aspects of Jon's personal life. The image of a model man, always dedicated to his community, began to fade as the darker parts of his life were revealed. Jon was not only a skilled healer, but also someone who had destroyed several marriages. His extramarital affairs were not just personal matters, but could have created many silent enemies, people who harbored grudges and waited for the right moment to exact revenge. This complexity made the case more convoluted, opening up countless investigative possibilities. Eric Thompson seemed like the ideal suspect, with a clear motive and suspicious actions on the day of the murder. But as the evidence failed to incriminate him, a larger question emerged. If not Eric, then who was behind Jon's death? Who stood to gain the most from eliminating Jon? Could it have been someone whose family Jon had torn apart? Or perhaps someone who found a way to cover up their own crime by exploiting the murky details of Jon's life? The killer, whoever they may be, seemed to know all too well about Jon's vulnerabilities and used this complexity to conceal their crime. Could it be someone other than Eric, someone who knew every detail of Jon's private life and had meticulously planned the murder, leaving no clear trace behind? Or was this merely a crime driven by blind hatred and jealousy? What is most frightening about this case is the uncertainty surrounding its conclusion. No one knows for sure whether Eric is truly innocent. No one knows who the real murderer is. All the answers lie buried in speculation and doubt. Jon lived a life shrouded in mystery, and his death seems equally cloaked in a thick fog of suspicion and deceit. Jon's family has yet to find justice. They are still waiting for the day when the truth comes to light, a day when the killer will finally pay for their brutal actions. But until that day comes, Jon Tokuhara's murder remains an unsolved mystery. People continue to ask, who really killed Jon? And what exactly happened on that fateful night? Only time will provide the answers to these questions. Jon Tokuhara's case is not only a story of love and betrayal, but also a reminder that every life holds deep secrets that we may never fully uncover. And those secrets sometimes can lead to tragic consequences no one could have foreseen.